Well, good afternoon. Our final session today is an immersive cyber incident simulation delivered by two experts in offensive security, threat response, and crisis management. I'm Noel Condon, Director of Unimutual. So it's my pleasure to introduce our two leaders in this space this afternoon. Mark Farley has more than 14 years' experience supporting organizations through cyber crises. Before joining SRM, he led the offensive security team for Kroll in Europe, Middle East, and Asia, and later moved on to Singapore. His background includes significant cyber roles within the UK government, as well as 5 years in a major global consulting firm. His experience includes acting as a virtual Chief Information Security Officer, and for global technology and manufacturing companies, supporting high-stakes M&A, and leading red and purple team assessment programs. I had to look up what a purple team was. I suggest you do too, if you don't know. Mark brings a uniquely tactical and pragmatic perspective on how organizations can prepare for, contain, communicate during, and strategically respond to cyber attacks. Will Stenmark is a senior consultant with Atmos, the Atmos Readiness Team. He's a high-performing solicitor and incident response manager with deep experience assisting organizations to recover from large-scale cyber incidents. Will has worked with a diverse range of clients, including universities, ASX multinationals, government agencies, and foreign conglomerates. His expertise lies in leading incident responses, providing strategic direction, and establishing robust processes for recovering from cyber incidents. Please join me in welcoming Mark and Will to the stage.
Afternoon, everyone. So we're going to do an interactive incident response simulation now. So please get involved. If there are any questions on the screen, you have to answer via the QR code on the table. Scan it or open a website. Don't worry, it's safe. It's not malicious. Well, I kind of would say that.
It's first test.
First test, yeah. But if you've got any questions at any point, please raise your hand, ask them. We want it to be, I guess, as interactive as possible. So, as Noel introduced me, so I'm Mark Farley. So I'm based in Singapore, and I look after proactive services for the APAC region for SRM, which is anything usually pre-incident, so from your strategy, risk, penetration testing, ethical hacking, so breaking in, causing trouble in a contained way, and helping people recover and make sure they're more prepared for cyber incidents.
And you heard from Noel, Will Stenmark, Senior Consultant at Atmos. I work within the Cyber Readiness Team. For those of you that don't know Atmos, Atmos is a dedicated cyber, digital, and privacy, legal and advisory firm. We're just coming up on the back of 1 year in business. But before that, and our leaders have had up to 10 to 15 years of experience supporting organisations across Australia, New Zealand and internationally through complex and large-scale cyber crisis events. Delighted to be supporting Mark this afternoon, and as he said, the idea is that this is the last session for the day. We're mindful we're the only thing between you all and the bar, so we're very keen for it to be collaborative. Please shout out, put your hand up, yell at us if there's any questions, and we're happy to take that all the way throughout.
So I thought Atmos was a coffee company from elsewhere.
Yeah, you probably saw me this morning lurking by the coffee machine, flogging Atmos socks. We've got a few more pairs if anyone's interested.
So from an SRM perspective, we are a global consultancy. We help companies manage kind of risks, both from a corporate intelligence, so doing an analysis on due diligence, anti-money laundering, helping sort of the business side make those decisions. Then on the cybersecurity side, both pre and post cyber incident, how do you make sure that you are secure enough? And then when an incident goes wrong, how do you actually recover? So as part of that, we do not only responding to the incident, containing the incident, investigating the incident, we'll do what's called threat active negotiations. We will actively work on your behalf to talk to the threat group to achieve whatever the outcome will be. So SRM's background is actually in sort of kidnap, ransom, extortion. I should say not committing, I guess helping on response of those elements. So we use a lot of that expertise from those sort of human cases that we bring into sort of the cyber world. We're also got award-winning, so the one particular interest, probably the middle one, the Z-Wave one. That's an international insurance award. We've won Best Incident Response Team 3 years in a row. I think voting for the new one's going to come out soon, so please vote for us on that one. In terms of offices, we've got currently 9. You would notice the key one is probably the grey one. So Sydney is opening later this year. So that's our plan for, I guess, global domination, but also helping fit the sort of time zones. So we work in a very 24/7 model to make sure incidents get responded to as quickly as possible. So we use our global team to make sure you are recovered as quickly, you know what's happened, and you can get back up and running as quickly as you can. So I was about to start the scenario. So this should be the same QR code you've got on the table. So there's going to be questions to answer on here. So there may not be any questions yet, so feel free to just open it up now. But the QR code will be repeated, and it's on your table as well.
The final thing I'll just add before we dive in is we're mindful that there's a diverse group of risk professionals in the room today. What we're asking is that you put yourself in the shoes of the crisis management team from your respective organisations or the leadership team in navigating the challenges and the questions that we put to you today. But also, of course, we'd love any questions from your personal capacity and role as well within the organisation too. We're keen to field all those questions and provide you our honest thoughts and advice. So,
first one. Phishing email. So we're going to test out your user awareness training. How well are you familiar with sort of with phishing? So there we go. So you have this email that's come in. You've got us. So we are Cedar Valley University. We've got an email coming in. It may not be malicious. It may be malicious. It comes in saying, dear university staff member, your university password is set to expire. To maintain uninterrupted access and to essential university services, please click the link and update your password immediately. There's now sort of a link in there, and failure to update may prompt in an account suspension or loss of access to your important resources. Thank you for your cooperation. So my first question for you guys, this is where the training comes in. What are the indicators this might be a phishing email? So feel free to, if you're on the question, you should have the ability to type in kind of different words and phrases. And you should be able to, if you're on the screen on your phone, you should be able to click the email to see it in more detail.
So we got answers. Email address, of course. Suspicious link there, misspelling. If it's an email from me, that's probably going to have some misspelling in that anyway. Sender email address. Yeah, all the right kind of answers, guys.
Yeah, doing very well. This is the problem with getting phishing emails is when you put it on the screen like that, those things kind of look obvious. You notice that it's not going to be the same email address. You notice the domain's different. A sense of urgency there. But the problem you have is that still at least a third, if not more, incidents start with some level of phishing. And now we have sort of AI platforms so that actually you use your AI in your general workplace, but obviously there's meeting about that or discussing that earlier. You're using it to proofread emails. Threat actors are using it as well. So they are getting these better emails coming out. It's actually so much so if I get an email from finance, it's with all of sort of typos and strange attachments on it, I probably know it's real and not actually from a threat actor. But yeah, I think you've got everything covered in that sort of what happened here. Obviously you've got all the key bits you notice there. So this here is a demonstration of what happens when you click on one of those links. You all heard about MFA. MFA saves you. It does to some extent, but this attack right here is showing how the threat actor can sit between you and your email address and Office 365 or Microsoft 365 and steal your credentials. On your screen right now, you can see that code, you can see the person logging in, to Office 365, it looks perfectly normal. On the right-hand side, you see what the attacker sees. You would see that they have detected the username, they've taken sort of and what they've taken there, that big, long stretch of hexadecimal numbers and digits, and that's called your session token. So that is what allows you to access Office 365 without constantly re-entering your password. So what happens right here is that in the browser, the attacker is now copying that session token into the browser, which will allow, once you refresh, should allow them access into the Office 365 portal as you as a user. So one of the key things here is this person followed all the good security advice. They've got their username, they've got the different password, they've got multi-factor authentication. But because they still interacted with a malicious website, the threat actor was still able to get in there because they were able to sit between the user and Office 365 and control that traffic. This is called an adversary in the middle style attack. So a lot of the times when we're seeing people have their emails compromised, particularly in Australia or UK or America, they are doing the basics, but it's just things like this is where some of those controls are only as good as the people using it. That's why I guess phishing is still prevalent, despite everyone knowing, check the email address, check for urgency, check for things like that. Anything you want to add, Will?
No, it's just fascinating. So this is the work that Mark and the team does in red teaming and those purple teaming exercises. So this is obviously a live visualization of that work, and would strongly recommend, and I know that the organisations that make up the people in this room are no doubt already doing all these exercises, but would implore you to take it up.
And the important thing is the access to that software to do that costs nothing. You can go to GitHub, you can download it, you can run it yourself, you can start your own sort of campaigns. But this is not legal advice or any career advice. So, yeah. So phase one. So we had the phishing email come in. Now we've got kind of mass phishing sent. So what's always interesting, once you've got access to a compromised email account, your attack then kind of starts. So the attacker can start phishing colleagues, staff. They can start attacking students. They can start go out to public, sort of external parties, your suppliers, your donors, your officials. They're obviously different people, different threat actors, hackers have different priorities. Often it's about making money. So they're going to look in your inbox, they're trying to work out, actually, are there invoices in here? Can I get the finance team to pay me to a new account? Can I send a follow-up email to one of my suppliers and go, oh, sorry, on the last invoice, I sent you the wrong banking details. Can I send it out? But one of the key things here is that your security controls often stop bad stuff coming into your network or coming into your inbox. Often when you're inside or you have access to an email, those same security controls don't work as well because they trust you. You have trust being accessed to the system, so you can then have the ability to send more malicious emails, or you can access, for example, Office 365, you've got OneDrive, you can put malicious files on there. Sending people link to that sort of data allows you to bypass what you would consider your hard outer shell of your company that blocks all those sort of malicious attacks.
No, we still see from our own incident data that these kind of attacks make up 35 to 40% of all Australian incidents that we deal with. We refer to them at this stage, so what we're looking at right now is a business email compromise, so it seems. So we're dealing with, of our 500 or so incidents a year, 30 to 40% of them are this type of incident. We refer to them as a slip and trip of modern cyber incident response, but they can still be incredibly costly for organisations. And as Mark is setting us up for, can also entail that deep data risk as well in relation to personal information stored on those mailboxes and also confidential information as well.
Yeah, and I guess back to the AI question. So in some of our incident responses, what we've seen is a threat actor at adding AI bots, AI sort of personal organizers to do with inboxes. It allows them to do that. It gives them more persistent access to the environment. It makes it easier for them to search for finance or invoices or money, or even just track the flow of traffic through the actual environment. I guess previously, they'll just use the search function to try and find things. Now they're using, I guess, legitimate AI tools to allow them to organize their new inbox, which is obviously the one they compromise. So it allows them back to the data point to work out actually what data they actually have and what the impact is likely to be. Should that be leaked? Should that be exposed? Is there an extortion element there? Or am I just after the invoice, the money? Depending on what the threat actor really wants to go after. So the next question. A user from your organization is now compromised. What steps would you take? So one option isn't have a cup of tea, even though I probably should have put that in there. So you proactively notify students and staff of the incident, provide them with clear instructions on what to do, including not to click links. Change compromised passwords and ignore all the emails. Contact cyber insurance to obtain expert advice on next steps. Shut down the network to contain the incident so you can conduct a full investigation to ensure all systems and accounts are secure. So I'll give you guys a moment.
There's a few juicy looking answers there, to be honest. All right.
We've got a well-trained audience here. Yeah.
Cyber insurance, I might jump in there. So the first thing I'll say is we always advise our clients to notify your insurer, so the mutual, as soon and as quickly as possible, and be as transparent as possible. Equally, if you can take steps to notify your broker as part of that process as well, double thumbs up from us. The role that Atmos plays is we're the preferred cyber incident response partner of the mutual and of AXA XL, which means that in the event of an incident, we're the team that will be notified off the back of a notification to AXA. The really key critical piece there is that we don't act for your insurer. And that's just super important to just scream out in flashing lights, is that we solely act for you and not for the insurer. We're there as a dedicated breach counsel, legal counsel and incident response manager to guide you through the incident. But as I said, that first step in notifying the cyber insurer is certainly key. And critical point to make, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to make a claim. Obviously, we have organisations here that have large deductibles, and so if we're looking at a fairly benign or perhaps a low impact kind of incident, you're not necessarily making a claim by notifying the insurer. Feel pretty comfortable in saying that the mutual would prefer you to notify when you do detect those issues, rather than sit back and manage it internally yourself.
So I guess in terms of the answers so far, I'd say the third one down, shut down the network. So that would be, I guess it does contain the attack and stop it getting worse. But the business interruption from that approach is going to cause probably a bigger issue than just the phishing email itself. So when ultimately that would be, I guess, you are causing more impact than you need to from just that kind of phishing email. When it comes to sort of proactively notifying students, I think, obviously being forefront of your communication so you control that communications flow is very important. People are going to receive that email. People have access to social media. So you also got to consider actually when you push that message out there, where's it going to go to? Who's it going to get to after that? Because you can't necessarily rely on it staying within sort of the university or organisation. It's likely to get out somewhere. And how does that actually impact your decision to do something?
Keen to actually hear from the audience there of any of the people that voted for that second answer around proactively notifying. Does anyone have any, or would anyone care to share their perspective there, or perhaps for anyone that didn't vote for that answer and voted for another answer, any perspectives on that proactive notification push and the rationale behind that? Come on. Yeah, jump in.
that
hot mic.
everyone selected the 80% to start with.
Yep.
And I actually think the answer which we should be looking for is not actually on the page.
Go on. Say more.
Firstly, if you you reach out to your cyber insurer from day one, from the very first moment, you don't know the depth of the issue. The insurer has different interests potentially than what you have, and you haven't contained or tried to contain or understand the depth of the issue in any way. I'm not opposed to reaching out to the student involved and or doing a broader broadcast if needs be, but I would have thought the first step was basically trying to understand what was going on, how far it was in depth, whether there was risk of further, not phishing, but infiltration of the system or otherwise. I'm surprised at the answers.
I think you're exactly right. I think those kind of activities we would expect to get started right away, immediately following detection. Whilst that cyber insurance position and that early notification might be something you consider, equally if it's only early stages and you're still trying to understand the issue, it might be something you hold off for in that early stage too. The key is as well though, if you do notify, whether you notify or whether you just provide an acknowledgement of circumstance to your insurer, that does get the ball rolling in terms of the partners that you can engage as well. Obviously, organisations in this room have partners on retainer and pre-existing relationships technically and otherwise that they can draw upon, and we'd recommend you to do so. But it does get the ball rolling. But I think you're right, that initial containment and early stages of the investigation is probably the first step there.
So just to add to what Andy said, it depends on who it is as well. So if it's someone that has global admin, for example, that's a very different scenario to a user. Because if we had to do that for every user, we'd be ringing the mutual 10 times a day.
Of course.
In reality.
Sure.
So I think for us and we have very clear critical incident processes. So if it was a critical incident, so for example, if an entire system was compromised and it is a ransomware event, that's a very different scenario to just a mailbox in our world from being compromised. So hence the answer actually depends. It's not up on the screen from a practical perspective in our university.
Sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. So if it's just one email, you're not going to call an insurance company. You know, look down. Okay, what is that? What's going on? The question is, how would you contact the staff member or student? If you email them, the threat actor is going to see that email as well. So can you phone them? Can you contact them in a different way to try and get their account kind of locked down?
Perhaps the audience here is foreshadowing the escalation that we're about to build into the scenario.
The inevitable escalation, yeah. But yeah, so with a lot of these questions, there's going to be probably either no right answer or no completely wrong answer. There's a lot of, I guess, grey in between deliberately. So, as you probably noticed, you probably could have shut down the network, called an insurance company and just gone home, but now we've got an impact of ransomware. So here we have, so we've got this email coming in from the head of IT security, notifying that Simon Jones has had his email sort of compromised. He's an associate professor of computer science, so please avoid sort of clicking any links or any emails that he's sort of sent you. And avoid clicking on links or downloading attachments or doing anything kind of to those emails, and report them when required. So now you've got this mass phishing going out from this email, people targeting these different people, sending out these documents needed to review. Obviously, one of the fundamental problems with, I guess, email and back to phishing is that people expect to receive emails, they expect to receive documents, they spend their time opening documents, irrespective of how much time the security team, don't open anything, don't respond to emails. Your business doesn't work that way, particularly if you work in any sort of institution that involves sharing data. So, as everyone knows, the situation is updated. Reports emerge that students and staff are unable to access their files, and various learning platforms are not responding. Your IT team, security team, is deployed to investigate what is happening. So now on your screen, you've got your files and servers are encrypted, affecting your daily operations. How should you prioritize system recovery? So there's 4 options on there, which you probably see closer on the actual screen of your phone. But option A is prioritize system recovery from backups taken 4 days ago. So estimate recovery time 5 days. This will minimize business interruption, but you accept the risk of sort of re-attack. Option B, rebuild new systems, selectively restore important data from backups. This is going to take 10 days. You ensure a secure recovery and prevent kind of future re-attack. Option C, the critical systems, restore the critical systems from backups 4 days ago. Recovery remaining systems through clean builds and selective data restores. It's going to take 12 days, but your critical systems are up in kind of 2 days. You restore critical systems to minimize business impact. And D, you accept the business interruption, wait for the forensic investigation to be completed before deciding on recovery approach. This is going to take 15 days at this point. This ensures a secure recovery and prevents sort of future attack. So people can try and select their kind of preferred option. Interesting options. So with all these things, it's actually, you probably in a real scenario, you wouldn't pick one of these systems, one of these scenarios, because they are, I guess, deliberately kind of, vague in some aspects. Because ultimately, we don't actually know what caused the incident, when it happened, really. We know we've got the phishing email. We know right now, we know that systems have been locked down. We can't access them. But is a backup from 4 days good enough? Am I actually just reinfecting myself with malicious stuff that's already there? Am I wasting my effort on doing restoration, which is going to come down again? And obviously, option D, which is very much, just do the investigation, find out what happened, and then plan to restore. That is, I guess, depending on your business, that is usually not acceptable. You can't wait, I guess, 10 days to work out exactly what happened before you restore your business. Because every day you're not operating, you are losing money, you've got people not satisfied with your service, you've got all these things going on. So you'd realistically do a combination of this. So C is probably where most people landed. That's probably going to be one of the key areas to go for. You'd also be doing the investigation at the same time. You'd do your containment at the same time. So as part of, I guess, your incident response planning is working out, not only do I how to restore data, how do I actually contain my sort of systems? How can I make a clean environment that allows me to restore my systems without the risk of kind of reinfection? And how do I do the investigation? Because all these things are sort of vitally important to work out actually how to actually get back up running as quick as possible. Because if you wait, do the investigation, you're going to kind of waste time. If you recover kind of too quickly into the same environment, you're going to end up reinfecting your systems. So you've got to sort of balance out these different areas as part of the recovery effort.
Short point from me, backups are not always a silver bullet, right? It's understanding first the initial access vector, the initial point of access, understanding what the adversary potentially touched, any changes they made to your environment before you consider whether it's safe to revert back to your backups.
So notification, obligations, and reputation management. So you have been notified by the forensics team that data has been exfiltrated. What would you do now? So you've got notify all staff and students that some data may be stolen. The investigation is underway. We will update you when you know more. Make a public announcement that there's been a data breach, but you're still investigating what's been taken. You're taking it very seriously. Avoid any announcement and now focus on internal recovery efforts. We can notify people when we know all the facts. Perform a detailed data review to see who's impacted and what data was taken so that you can make a targeted notification to those individuals.
Seeing a few results tick in there. Interesting that the public announcement is receiving some support.
Yeah, I'm liking the split across the answers.
Taking a position as your legal counsel for a second, I'd probably urge caution on a public announcement. No surprises for that. The first thing that you need to understand is the extent of the impact. Over notifying or notifying individuals that weren't actually impacted can be just as harmful, or can result in harm that potentially they wouldn't have been exposed to anyway. So it's really important to understand the extent of the impact, the extent of the exfiltration, the types of data points that are impacted, the size of the cohort that's impacted, before you can begin making a notification. The other point I'd say is you actually have more time than you'd expect. In Australia, you have 30 days at a Commonwealth level to conduct your assessment as to whether an eligible data breach has occurred. Mindful that a lot of organisations in here are perhaps captured by various state-based regimes in terms of eligible data breaches. They're vaguely and more or less aligned with the Commonwealth framework, and don't intend to kind of step through the different types there, but you do have more time. You have 30 days to make that initial assessment. And then after that, if it's an eligible data breach, you need to take steps to quickly notify the OAC or the state-based regulator and affected individuals as well, if there is that serious risk of harm.
I think also the context is also very important about the problem, I guess, of any sort of school or university, is that you have a lot of people under, I guess, who are there, or students who can upload data onto social media again. They're going to go, oh, great, a day off from thingy, I'm going to the pub, or whatever the correct thing. So actually, even though you may not want to make a public statement about the data breach, you maybe want to actually get in front of the messaging around, okay, we've had a cyber incident, we're investigating, to make because ultimately that information is probably going to get out there somehow. So how are you going to control that messaging there? And we're also, another thing missing here is actually, we haven't covered how many students are impacted, how many systems are impacted. Is it just one department? Is it multiple areas? Because with some of these ones, actually, you can just tell the couple of people involved, actually, and then don't do any wider notifications. You just go, okay, let's handle this, then we'll get out properly what's going on.
Just to reflect on a common pressure point that we've experienced in our own work with universities, it is that flow of information and also the execution and deployment of live crisis communications. It's so important that if you can do work ahead of time to prepare template statements in relation to different cyber crisis events, to have those statements approved and reviewed by the executive team and by your councils ideally, so that you can move quickly. As you'd expect, in the event of an incident, you're going to have a whole range of stakeholders that are acutely interested in reviewing those comms. Those comms, spoiler alert, are already 6 hours late. By the time you issue them, they're going to be another 6 hours late. So that pre-work just really comes to bear and is so useful and so valuable ahead of time.
Yeah, that point about stakeholders is really important, particularly if you've got a subsidiary that would you be notified on them having an incident? Do they have to notify you? What are the flows there? So we do a lot of work with private equity companies and big group companies who have different portfolio companies beneath them, and working out where the line in the communication situation is. Does it always have to go to the private equity or the group level, or does the actual portco have autonomy to actually make those announcements by itself? And ultimately, if you have the conversation beforehand, it becomes a lot easier during crisis, instead of one of them going, I guess, rogue and sending off a statement which you don't approve of, particularly for a conglomerate, and you've got there's an issue in one business. What's the impact on the other businesses? Do they need to be concerned? How does that messaging go? So yeah, that preparation point is vitally important. So this is the bit that people want to talk about. This is the more interesting bit. So engaging with the threat actor. So these days, this is what sort of a ransom note would appear on your computer. It will look kind of like this. They're all going to say, we have your files, we've encrypted them. This is LockGuard X ransomware. They have all the critical academic information, you've got administrative information. They've locked all down your systems. To recover your access to your files, you need to have a unique sort of decryption key, so a tool to reverse the encryption to allow you to get access to your data. They've given you a deadline of 48 hours to communicate them, and they want a nice $2 million US, so it's a nice day for them. And failure will result in permanent deletion of your decryption key, making it impossible for you to get back your data if you need it. They they'll say they'll demonstrate their ability to decrypt files. If you send them up to 3 files, they will return the decrypted version. They obviously do not rename the files, do not try to decrypt using third-party software, as it may cause loss of data, do not contact law enforcement, do not pass go, do not do all these sort of elements. And for payment, they want you to go to their dark web portal. And obviously, you've got a... So in terms of our current situation, we've got the earliest known compromise is 7 days ago. Our backups are only available from 4 days ago. So there's a delta there of 3 days. You had some issues in the recovery process. It means full recovery is estimated to take 21 days. The threat actor threatens to leak in 48 hours if the ransom is unpaid. The demand is $2 million US. So, the ransom note states you have 40 hours to make contact. What do you do now? Choose sort of one option. So, do you make contact straight away and tell the threat actor you're not going to enter into negotiations? Ignore and focus on recovery? Call the police? Focus on finding out more about the threat actor before making contact? Call your insurance company. Okay. Let's see. Getting some answers in now. Good. Still well trained.
Unimutual is going to be so informed in this incident response.
Yeah. But, Will, do you want to cover the call the police option?
Yeah, I'm happy to cover this all off, to be honest. First and foremost, does anyone have any kind of viewpoint on what the mutual would want you to do in terms of engaging with the threat actor or not, or paying, ultimately taking steps to pay? Yep, down the back there. That was a mic coming.
Hi, James Kerno from Children's Medical Research Institute. So we have a cyber incident response plan. Our first action is, in this instance, rather than the insurance company, we would actually be contacting the government agency that we're required to notify.
Sure.
And we would be working, obviously keeping them informed while working with our third party on all actions, but typically we're advised not to pay.
Yep.
As our standard point.
Yeah, great comment there. To cover that off, there is an obligation in Australia to notify the Australian Signals Directorate through National Office of Cyber Security in the event that you take steps to make or authorise or eventually pay a ransom. So if you pay a ransom or if someone pays a ransom on your behalf, you have 72 hours to notify that entity. It is certainly not illegal to pay a ransom in Australia by any way, shape or form, as long as you are not paying a sanctioned entity. The position from the government is obviously a very different position. The government has a firm no-pay policy, which we, from our work and experience working with the universities, we would expect to be a critical factor in many universities in how they go through that decision-making process. It's certainly not illegal to pay, but noting the relationship with the Commonwealth and state-based bodies too, we would expect that to come to bear. As for your point around notification, there is no obligation to notify a government body just from receipt of a ransom note. That said, given the scenario unfolded before you, we would expect, and especially the nationally significant importance of many of the organisations in this room, we would expect and we would advise you to make notification to the NOCS, which is the National Office of Cyber Security, on that first day. The NOCS acts as a critical centrepiece and mouthpiece for supporting the broader government coordination across Commonwealth and state. They're actually a really great, relatively new body on the scene, that plays a really vital role in supporting organisations manage cyber response. They play a really critical role in managing the inflows of RFIs that you receive from other government entities, so that you only have to answer the same question once, as opposed to answering every single RFI. So the NOCS is a body that we'd certainly recommend notifying. Great to hear that you got that cyber incident response plan that outlines your process, and that's all in place too. As for the police, the NOCS, notification to the NOCS would serve to notify the police. It's a question we get all the time. Typically, we don't advise and we don't bother notifying the police beyond kind of that general NOCS notification. Reason being, there's not a whole lot they can do in 90% of cases, given the location of these threat actors. If we're dealing with an insider, an aggrieved student perhaps, or a staff member, that would be a different question. And then certainly we'd look to explore those options. But typically the police is a stakeholder that we don't really need involved directly.
Yeah, just on that.
So just a quick question on that.
Yep.
From what I've heard from colleagues who've been involved in cyber events and responding to them, you let a federal agency know, and then the next thing you've got 5 state and federal agencies coming at you wanting to know. So I'm really delighted to hear that the NOCS is a centerpiece, that you can actually, a central agency. But does that actually stop all the other agencies coming at you for information?
Yeah, so you just described, Noel, very beautifully the shift that took place over the last year or so with the introduction of the NOCS. Previously, and you can think back to the DP World incident in which Claire O'Neill played a hugely public role in managing that response, and clearly that was a critical cog in the nation's supply chain and all the rest. But at that point in time, the NOCS wasn't in place and the government was stepping in, but there was zero coordination. And so letting them into the tent, and once again, a lawyer, we would advise reticence on making that notification, especially when you're not legally obliged to do so. The NOCS has been that game changer. The NOCS is the organisation that we're delighted to bring into the tent, especially early on. They will also support you, Noel, in managing the expectations of certain, for instance, government ministers that we might hold relationships with, to ensure that they're kept abreast along the way too. And then, as you say, they do funnel that coordination too.
Thank you.
Yeah, just involved. This is a different jurisdiction, but one of our clients, a very small company, called the police, and the police kindly decided to get involved. The problem is they want to take all their servers away and go and analyse them. The problem is that's the only servers they had. It would have meant actually putting the business out of action for the time it took the police to do that kind of analysis. So while it's very helpful, it kind of wouldn't have helped the business get up and running, even though it may have helped them, I guess, find out what happened during that. So
to dive just through the rest of this list very quickly, it's important to just lay out the key 3 components of threat actor management. So the first is adversary recon, so understanding your adversary. There is a huge amount of data typically on these kind of threat actors, which can be hugely important to your strategic direction and your approach to managing this incident. Secondly, once you've gathered that information, and it's kind of like due diligence on a potential partner that you're looking to do a deal with. So it is part of the piece. Once you have that information, it's the question of whether or not we'd like to engage with a threat actor. So that's a very different question from the next question, which is whether or not we'd like to pay, or whether we think we should pay the ransom. So it's critically important to decouple those 2 questions, because there's a huge amount of value that you can gain from that first engagement piece, which we'll step through in a moment. So too often we see organisations rush to the pay don't pay question, say, oh, we'd never pay a threat actor, we're a Commonwealth funded body, we can't pay a threat actor. That's all good and well, but let's first interrogate that question around whether or not there's anything to be gained from engaging with a threat actor in the first instance.
yeah, I guess on this thing, the one I'd strongly recommend not doing is to make a contact straight away and then tell them you're not going to enter negotiation. Because that you're giving them information there. They know they've had an impact on you. You know they exist. they are primed because they know actually you're aware of this going on. You kind of lost some of the negotiation power at that point already, even though I guess it makes people feel better to go and shout at this faceless entity, but it's best not to engage them to do that sort of particular tactic. So, the executive board thinks the university needs to pay the ransom. However, the CFO and legal counsel are not sure. Rank the top 3 factors for leadership to consider to reach a decision. So, ongoing business interruption due to system downtime, cost of permanent loss of data, legality of payment and potential sanctions issues, ethical considerations about funding criminal activity, reputational impact of paying versus not paying, and ethical considerations about protecting staff and customer data.
Permanent loss of data seems to be leading the way. It's interesting that data piece and the impact of system piece seems to flip-flop on any given year. Ransom legality.
Yeah, they're good answers. It's interesting.
So as these answers are rolling in, we've seen a shift in recent times with threat actors. 5 years ago, it was all about locking systems, encrypting systems, disrupting the business. Then it shifted to what we call double extortion, where they were locking systems and stealing data. But with the high-profile incidents in Australia, certainly that data theft and ultimate data publication became the super sensitive and pressurised component of ransomware. We've since recently seen that shift back to encryption and disruption to systems. A few key university examples of recent times in which systems have been down for months and months and months, and it's not despite the best efforts, it's not despite significant cybersecurity and resilience of those universities and indeed of broader organisations, but it is what these threat actors tend to be honing in on.
But I think it's interesting, the permanent loss of data. For most organisations, they have a lot of data actually they don't need. So they end up, for them, once they actually think about it, other than, I've lost this data and I can't get it back, they actually work out they don't actually need that data. They've been hoarding it forever. So actually, even though depending on, obviously, if you're an IP-rich entity and it's very vital information, that's very important. For the average company, it's not actually not that important. The one that drives most of these decisions is the ongoing business interruption. How long can I last without having my systems up and down? If it's only going to be an hour, then there's no point even engaging with the threat actor. You get yourself back and running. If it's going to take you 4 months to get back up and running without engaging with the threat actor, that's completely different. Because you've got to factor in where your money's coming through, what you're doing, and how are you actually going to operate. Actually, there's actually one off the screen, which is actually also very important, is the threat actor's track record of honouring agreements. So there's lots of threat groups out there. I say a few years ago, there used to be like 3 main threat groups. Now there's about at least 150 different names. And a lot of these threat groups, they want to have a good reputation. It sounds very weird. They are designed because they want people to pay them. If you enter negotiation with someone and they are known to be untrustworthy, you're not going to get a high enough price. You're going to know that actually there's a massive risk that this is going to go wrong. So if you've got a track record of how the threat actor has handled stuff in the past, it gives you an idea what they're going to do in the future. Are they more than reliable or less reliable? And that really does inform your sort of strategy. So obviously to Will's point about knowing your adversary, that's, vital. That's very much having that threat intelligence is really important there. And obviously with reputational impact, I'd say these days, actually, there's less reputational impact than there used to be around sort of engaging with threat actors and paying, just because it's become very common. It's also, so that's kind of slipped down the priority list. And obviously, the ethical concerns, they are they're always there. It's very hard to kind of get over there. But for most businesses, it's all about that interruption piece. Is that more important than those ethical concerns, even though it's vitally important?
Before we move on that reputational impact piece, keen to hear from anyone. How, because I'm interested by the results there, how would you know if a university or an organisation has paid a ransom? Any thoughts in the room? Feel free to shout it out. Come on. How would you know? What are the indicators? What would you say? What would you hear? Threat actors publicise it, perhaps? Any other views? So the threat actor typically won't publicise it. It's bad business for the most part. The answer is you typically don't know. The problem goes away. That's how you know. You don't hear or see organisations speaking publicly about the fact that they paid a ransom. It's something that's not done. It's something we wouldn't advise you to do. The line that you might notice once I tell you, and then probably it's like a yellow car. Like once you see a yellow car and you pick it out, that's the only thing you see. The line at the bottom of the notification statement that typically indicates that an organisation has paid the ransom is we've taken all reasonable and possible steps to mitigate harm, risk, and all the rest for our stakeholders. That's the line that typically means we paid a ransom. But otherwise, there's no indication of the fact that an organisation pays a ransom. So that reputational piece around whether there's any risk reputationally of paying a ransom, I'd challenge that. Certainly the ethical consideration is worth keeping in mind.
I think also you can get an indication if someone has paid a ransom if they're put on sort of the threat actor's shaming site and suddenly their name disappears from that shaming site. That usually is an indication that something's gone on in the background, probably some sort of payment has happened. Yeah. Do you want to cover anything to do with sanctions?
I think it's all clear. Very quickly, we'll be running sanctions checks on your behalf in the background. There's personal liability that attaches to the decision makers on a university, for instance. So the council that we would expect to typically authorise a ransom payment. So there is personal and criminal liability in circumstances that entity that payment is made to is a sanctioned entity. So sanctioned entities can be people that are designated on the Australian or the UN sanctions list, is what the list we use. Or they can be organisations, criminal or terrorist organisations attached to certain sanctioned states. So we will be running those checks so that we, on a consistent and rolling basis, you can never 100% know who you're paying. So it will provide you a detailed sanctions due diligence advice, which is based on a traffic light risk rating. Typically, we're working on a low to medium risk, given just the uncertainty of these entities. Equally, we'd expect the Mutual and AXA in the background to be running their own sanctions checks because it's worth raising this. A ransom payment, if any organisation in this room, any member was to make a ransom payment, it would be the member and through the member's funds in the first instance that are paying the ransom, not the insurer. And then after ransom is paid and after the sanctions checks are cleared, the insurer will reimburse you for that ransom payment. So it's critical that there is that tandem and ongoing rolling sanctions checks throughout the piece.
Yeah, I think the checks are vitally important to make sure you've done them. There have been cases where people have paid a non-sanctioned entity only for that entity to become sanctioned by the time the claim was gone through. But they were able to demonstrate they did the appropriate checks at the time, so actually the insurance company did end up kind of reimbursing them. But if they hadn't done the checks, then they wouldn't have any kind of evidence to demonstrate that they hadn't done the appropriate steps to actually make sure they weren't paying a sanctioned entity. So in terms of your sort of cost of no payment and payment, obviously irrespective, you're going to have some sort of breach of contract litigation possibly coming through. You're going to have probably medium business term interruption if you don't pay. There's potential sort of lost customers, potential regulatory fines, like data subject claims, and sort of your rebuild costs. That's kind of your cost of no payment. But there's also a cost of payment beyond sort of paying the actual ransom. You've got the demand. You're going to still have business interruption. Just because you pay doesn't mean your systems are back up and running magically. It will take time to recover them, or time to get the data back. It should be less than the, I guess, not paying, but you should still actually be there. You've also got your probably lower subject data claims, but you still have to sort of tend to notify if you know what data has been taken. I'll let you take that in a moment, Will. You've got potential sanctions, fines, still loss of customers, and then you've got the ethical reputation impact as well.
So on that data piece, if you do take steps to make a ransom payment, that doesn't alleviate or wash away clearly your obligations to notify affected individuals that had their data caught up in that data breach if it does meet that serious harm threshold, because there has been that unauthorised access, there has been that loss of data. What it does do, and this is how we like to describe it, it just draws a privacy screen around you and allows you to make that assessment in your own time rather than with the rest of the world as the data is dumped online. To reflect back to the HWLE breach, and in that breach we acted for a large number of the impacted clients of HWLE. And in that breach we were endeavouring to support them through manage their obligations as best as they could. The data was ultimately dumped online, and we were unable to access the data because there was such a high volume of individuals, of organisations going onto the dark web to download the data themselves that we couldn't actually get to it. The website, the platform was malfunctioning, we couldn't actually download the data. So in that instance, when they didn't pay a ransom, you're trying to assess your data obligations, your data impact in real time with the rest of the world without that privacy. So paying that ransom really puts that privacy screen around you, allows you to carry out your response in your own time, at your own pace, and understand your obligations before going out to affected individuals in a coordinated, structured way.
So situation update. It's unclear what data has been stolen. It's 24 hours since the ransom note, with 24 hours left on the timer. The forensics team is saying it's taking more time to figure out what data was stolen. The executive board wants to pay a ransom. So, when should you make contact with the threat actor? Choose one option. So you got immediately, just before the threat actor's deadline, just after the threat actor's deadline, 24 hours after the threat actor's deadline to show you're not desperate.
This is all strategy, by the way.
Yeah.
Gamesmanship.
And ultimately the answer would depend on your organisation, depending on which one you go for. We've had situations where a company has basically needed to engage the threat actor, negotiate and get decrypto within the day to kind of save their business. So I think our record is kind of 6 hours sort of doing that, sort of get them back to the decryptor and sort of sort out the payments.
In the States, you see entities just whack out the credit card and pay right away. We don't really have that kind of culture here, no surprises. But there is that strategy. It's that go fast or that go slow strategy. If you do reach out in the first instance and engage, what that does do is it typically starts the timer with the threat actor. If you hold back, you can keep your powder dry for a little bit longer. But equally, if you have that screaming disruption, if you have that impact to systems, then you're probably going to want to move quickly. If you know that it's perhaps just a data incident, and just a data breach, or if you perhaps have some indication that it's benign data that's impacted, you might want to drag it out a bit slowly. You might want to keep the threat actor interested, engage, commence in that kind of process to drag the timeline out for you to lead your own response so you're not operating on the threat actor's timeline.
Yeah, it's very important to know who the threat actor is as much as possible as well, because that will tell you how long you typically have to kind of negotiate. obviously depends on the strategy. Often we're trying to ignore their deadlines as much as possible. So it's just try and, I guess, control some level of power in the negotiation. But obviously that comes with risks. If you go past their deadline, they're more likely to publish that data, more likely to do the next step. But the thing to consider there is, as soon as they put your name on that kind of the dark web website, actually they've lost a bit of the hold over you. Your reputation, I guess, has then taken a bit of a hit because your name's on there. So ultimately, you're going to want to pay less to get that, to take that name down because it's already out there. You can't get it back out. Same for if they put your data on there. They're going to, if they put it on there, you're not going to pay after that unless you have serious business interruption. So a lot of these deadlines, while they are there, they want to keep you, I guess, want to keep negotiation going. There is also flexibility in them, depending on the different threat group. And some of them have different rules about when and how long they want to let a negotiation go. Often they want to get it there done as quickly as possible. But ultimately, these groups want to make money. Their aim is to generate revenue. So if there is someone going to negotiate with them, they're going to want to kind of engage. So you're going to communicate with the threat actor. Who should communicate with the threat actor? Choose sort of one option. You've got the Vice Chancellor, as they are a key decision maker on how to know the business best. The Head of IT, as they will know the systems best and will likely end up testing the crypto once purchased. A representative of a retained response firm, and someone unrelated to a response from the university who can act as an intermediary.
Head of IT. Someone's just voted for themselves there. Yep, you're nailing it, guys. The short point here is don't reach out to the threat actor yourselves. If you reflect back to the note, you'll have that link, and that link takes you to the threat actor's chat site, so you can actually commence that negotiation yourself. That's the whole point of it, right? Don't click on that link. Don't commence that engagement yourself. A key consideration to think about, though, is if that note has landed on the desktops, the workstations of your staff, of students, they can access that link. They can get into that chat room too. So that containment strategy is critical. Our advice would be to engage someone, SRM for instance, on your behalf. So Atmos would engage SRM on your behalf. We then take instructions from you as to how you want to communicate. We provide advice on strategy and then provide that advice to SRM. Really, they're experts in it too, so we take advice from them around best strategy. Interestingly, you always communicate, at least, and I'm keen to hear if Mark has a separate or a distinct viewpoint. We always advise, and from our experience, you're always negotiating as a fictional employee or executive of the impacted organisation. Threat actors don't love to hear that they're speaking to Mark, who's been doing it for 15 years and knows the ins and outs of threat actor negotiation. You're negotiating as Bob or Mary from accounts or someone else from the university.
Most people don't talk to me, so yeah. But I guess in terms of this, I think, yeah, a retained firm or response firm is kind of, I guess, the ideal situation. But as part of the, I guess, negotiation, it shouldn't be the firm going off and doing it all by themselves. The main bit of the threat actor negotiation work is working about the strategy. When you do it, how you do it, what you're trying to achieve from the actual negotiation. Because is it just to buy more time so you can get your communications in place for when the data breach comes out? Is it to find out what data they've taken? Because actually, often during an incident, even doing the forensics, you can't tell exactly what data has been gone. You know what systems are impacted. You know that X gigabytes or terabytes of data been taken from your network. It doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what data is taken. Actually, do they actually have your information as well? It's also very important to go through that. But these are all kind of bits you need to consider as part of that strategy. And the key bit about the cabinet response firms, like any negotiation, you can use it to try and put in barriers. Because the threat actor is going to be talking to you going, I want to answer now, I want to do this, I want to do that. So whereas an independent person can go, oh, sorry, I don't have permission to do that. I need to speak to the board about that. They're not available to talk until 9 o'clock tomorrow. So you can actually introduce your barriers into the negotiation, take some of the pressure off. we've had plenty of situations where the victim of the attack have actually been logging on the portal at the same time. And even though we told them, don't touch it, just leave it, you see them sending messages at the same time. So absolutely ruining the strategy of what's been discussed. These portals are often on the dark web. They're often, they're portals managed by the threat actor. So they know exactly when you log in. They can see what you do. So if you send a message saying, oh, I'm not interested in negotiating, great. But if you're sitting there refreshing the page every 30 seconds to see if they respond, they know that's not true. They know you're there, you're actively there, you're waiting for them. Same if you start typing a message in there and they start sort of delete it, they're logging all your keystrokes on there. They know what you're typing, so you can give away your strategy from that perspective. These are all kind of some of the nuances that you kind of engage in this practice. It is, I guess, a lot of these things is very much a bit performative. They probably know that you have a negotiator there helping you out. They know this stuff is happening in the background. But it still goes along with the same sort of process. The aim is ultimately to achieve whatever your objective is from the negotiation without minimizing business interruption or minimizing payment, whatever the outcome needs to be. So it's on the keyboard. Yeah, no decision makers kind of near the keyboard. Obviously, they should be actively informed, actively engaged in the strategy and coming up with messaging or responses. It helps introduce sort of barriers, so for approval, de-escalation, give you that bit of extra time. Like I said about the threat, the portals are all monitored. You need to be aware of that. And obviously, you also need to know how to access them and gain access to them. And do you want to access them from your system? You want to have a clean, separate environment to actually access those portals. What if they're malicious? What if you spent all this time fixing your environment and suddenly they deploy sort of malware from that website again and take down all your systems again?
The key point just there that I'd make is build an extortion decision-making framework ahead of time. This is not a document that spits you out at if X, Y, and Z considerations are ticked, then we will always pay a ransom or we will never pay a ransom. Our recommendation is those kind of documents aren't super effective, nor are policies necessarily, but a framework that maps out the considerations that can be then provided to the key decision makers to work through is best practice in our mind. Yeah. Equally for those directors or council members or officers, it's important to show, especially in the intensifying regulatory landscape, that they've turned their mind to these decisions ahead of time from a class actions risk perspective and otherwise. So those kind of considerations and mapping out ahead of time is really effective in doing so. And according to ASIC and according to all the rest, it is important that they take steps to carry out themselves.
Yeah, knowing how to make these hard decisions is vitally important, particularly before an incident, because otherwise you'll be sleep deprived, stressed, and all that stuff. You're going to make the wrong decision if you don't have some sort of framework in place. So, situation update. The ransom demand confirmed they want $2 million in Bitcoin. They have not made good on leaking the data after you talk through the deadline. The maximum the board are willing to pay is $600,000. The board are also having second thoughts about whether they can trust the threat actor to honor any agreement if they pay. So, how can we be sure that the threat actor will honor any agreement you reach? Option one, you can't. They're criminals. They may walk away with the money you pay. They have a brand protect, which means that they will likely honor their agreement. You can ask them to prove they can really decrypt the data. You can ask them to prove that they really store your data. You can try and convince them to pay 50% upfront and the rest after you have confirmed decryption of the data. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, this one. Is there honor amongst thieves? Are you trusting them? So I think the top one is obviously the correct answer, in the sense that you can't trust them. They are criminals. They've already taken down your network, so they're not the most, honest people to deal with. But one of the key things is going to be, you are going to want to get them to decrypt data. You're going to want them to actually be able to prove that they can actually decrypt the data. You also want them to prove to actually know what data have you stolen. Because like I said before, that you may not know what data is taken. So they will provide you a list of data, or at least a summary of the data they've taken, so you can see actually what is it. Is it important? Is it test data? Is it actually data you need right now? Is it actually that important? And then the whole sort of 50% upfront, the rest after decryption. They have the same problem that you have. How are they going to trust that you're going to pay the 50% afterwards? You're going to sign a legal contract with them, or maybe you can negotiate that. It's worth trying, but it's also very difficult. But the one you ultimately end up relying on is the brand, because they have their brand to protect. So all these ransomware gangs are essentially software companies. You go to a platform, you pay to use their software, which allows you to launch these attacks. That software comes with the ability to, I guess, make payments, do a negotiation, host the data. So this whole ecosystem is like going to Amazon or Microsoft, buying software using that. But I guess the people who own that infrastructure, they want to keep the people who are using it kind of, I guess, honest. Because if one person doesn't follow through, it tarnishes the whole reputation of their product, which then means less people will be willing to use in the future, lowering demands going forward. So one of the, I guess, interesting cases we had recently, we had a client got hit back in May by a gang called Akira. They're very well known, very prevalent, particularly around sort of Asia at the moment. And they got hit actually 2-3 years beforehand by the same threat group. So as part of the negotiation process, we did do the whole, hey, you guys hit us 2 years ago. And they were actually honored themselves. They went, sorry, apologize for that. Here's your decryption key. And actually did that without needing any extra payment. It seems very weird, but that kind of happened.
So that's a true story, and
Yeah.
I pressed Mark on that before this, because that is mind-blowing even to me. But Akira is the dream group that you want to be hit by. So if you're going to be hit by a group, get hit by Akira. The statistics that will show you in the event that you were kind of impacted by Akira are all kind of up in the 90%. Come good on their word, provide decryption key. The decryption key works on all the data that's encrypted, but they're in the kind of middle ground around the 50% mark is the worst place to be. If you're kind of dealing with someone that has very low indicators, then that's fine. You just dismiss it more or less straight away. That middle zone is the really challenging spot for organisations.
Yeah. I don't know what would happen, well, if it was hit by 2 separate threat groups. They actually, I do know, they wouldn't have honoured that, but at least it was the same one they did. So yeah, can you trust cyber criminals? Yeah, it's a business model. There's no other way of looking at it. They are essentially a commercial enterprise. They've got their own portals. They've got IT support to help you with the decryption process. They will try their best to a certain level to help you get back up and running. Obviously, you want to have proof of possession, proof of decryption, so it's very important to do this. Stage payments is obviously, it can work, but rarely works, worth trying. But obviously, with the proof of decryption, proof of stolen data, you want to know what data they've taken, so you can pick a file not in that data pool. Because if you just pick one already in the list of data, they can just send you the unencrypted version. You haven't, I guess, tested anything there. They still could do it for a different system, but at least you tried your best to help them demonstrate that the decryption does work if it's a system they haven't, I guess, a data file they haven't presented on that list. So we've got the proof of possession, process is complete, negotiation on the price begins. The threat actor has decrypted 2 sample files and you provided to them. The threat actor has also provided a file tree. That's kind of the list of stolen data. So, what argument might you use to convince the threat actor you cannot pay the asking price of $2 million? So, select all options you think. So, the university has financial challenges due to current geopolitical situation, the uncertainty in international student admissions. You've had another breach in the past and paid the threat actor all your available cash. Your liquidity is poor right now. You can only secure funds by taking a loan from the bank. You've recently invested all your cash in new facilities, and there's not much available for payment.
Get your answers in quick, guys. We just got 10 minutes, so we'll keep pushing.
Yeah, we've got a couple of slides left. Yeah. So the second one's interesting, because from a threat actor perspective, yeah, you're saying your liquidity is poor, but all they hear is you can get more funds from the bank. So you actually aren't that poor, you have the money available. When it comes to the bottom two, ultimately they've probably stolen your financial accounts, they've stolen your insurance policy, they've stolen all that data, which they can use to analyze to work out what's going on. Probably the best answer is probably the top one, because it's known, it's realistic, they know all this, it's likely to cause issues, so they can actually help as part of the story and as part of the negotiation process. So the threat actor pushes back on arguments that you cannot pay $2 million. They reply they've seen your financial statements from last year, and they say you can afford it. But they can do a discount if you pay quickly. They ask for your offer. So, in order to not exceed the highest chance, to ensure the highest chance of a successful resolution, without exceeding the final offer of $600,000 set by your board, where would you start your initial your bid? There we go. Someone's gone brave by trying to go to the full limit, pretty much. That's quite interesting, because I'd have thought the 60K would be the highest number, because people always go, I start low. But the problem with that number is like imagining you're selling a house and someone walks in and goes, I'll give you 10% of the value of your house, even less than 60 of it. I'll give you 5% of the value of your house to buy it. You're going to politely or not so politely tell that person to go away. And from the threat actor perspective, they want to make money, so they want to get some money, but they get brand and a reputation from leaking your data and putting you on their website. So is the 60K worth it from there? Do you look like you're going to be someone who's actually willing to pay, or are you just a chance? Are you trying it on just to see how low you can get it? So you want to pick a number which is obviously not too high, giving you the ability to go up when they push back, and not too low to insult them and annoy them and irritate them. So we'd spend obviously time working out actually, fundamentally as part of the negotiation, how much are you willing to spend on this? Which is a very important question. Because it doesn't matter if the threat actor says, I want $8 billion. If you can't afford $8 billion, it doesn't matter. So you need to work out where a sensible number would be. And you probably are, if possible, to be trying to avoid round numbers that you just look like you've pulled out to go, oh, yeah, 200K, 300K. But there's a whole, art to that.
Over the course of the last year, we've supported organisations, or roughly 25 organisations that have paid ransoms in Australia. And I think there's been, the Knox told us the other day, I think there's been 25 notifications, legitimate notifications that have been made through to the ASD and to the Knox off the back of the new mandatory ransom payment reporting. So we've supported on the lion's share of those. Our median median ransom paid across that time has been 500K, just around, which is lower than I'd expect. Our largest final demand was $20 million US. It wasn't paid. And our smallest minimum demand was around 20,000 USD. So there is that flex, but typically we're finding the majority of the payments, and the median payment is around 500,000 US dollars.
I think the highest one we saw last year was 50 million demand. Actually got down to below $1 million in terms of the final payment, the actual percentage, which is quite impressive. But yeah. So the threat actor counter offers is 550. So you decide to pay. They say the sum is low, but they've spoken to the boss, and they're keen to get the payment done. The board decides to move forward with the payment. You do not hold Bitcoin. So what do you need to do before payment? Select all available options. So you've got restate your settlement objectives, perform a test transaction, perform a final sanctions check, notify your insurers, notify law enforcement, engage a special payment broker.
I think we kind of stepped through all of these elements before. So Yep, you want a test transaction, well, that will be carried out by your specialists. You're working closely with the insurers on this. You have your payment broker on hand, and the notification to the ASD will follow afterwards.
Yeah. Obviously, with the sanctions checks, you need to do it kind of again, because they're always point in time, just to make sure you're doing it right now before you pay. Obviously, notify insurers if you haven't already done so, but we're very keen to notify them based on the poll so far. The one which is quite performative, but also worth doing, is restating your settlement objective. So what are you actually paying for? So you're paying for them to delete your data. You're paying for them to tell you how they got into the environment. You're paying them not to hack you again. You're paying for all these sort of different things. You're restating them as part of this. So it's not that, so hopefully they won't hack you again. You can't come back and go, oh, you didn't pay us. You only paid us for the decryption tool. You didn't pay us for the data to delete it. It is slightly performative, but at least you have that kind of record of what you've kind of paid for and why you did it. The threat actor fully fulfills the settlement. You receive a decryptor via the dark web portal. The threat actor confirms they have deleted your data they stole. They provide commentary explaining how they got into the network, and they state they will not attack you again. So I guess, well done guys, we kind of got through that. So when you're talking about threat actor negotiation, it's very important to, this is kind of our sort of framework we're talking about. So you've got an engagement decision. You're going to go, okay, who is the threat actor? What do I know about them? Are they a new gang? Are they trustworthy? Have I got a track record of what happens? Then you've got to go talk to the executive team. So what actually, who needs to be involved here? Step through your sort of risk assessment, how you want to do this. Do you need to? What's happening? Then deciding, do you actually engage the threat actor? With some of these things, you may, at the start of an incident, you may decide, actually, I don't need to at this point. But as you get through the incident, those decisions may change. Then you're going to start developing your negotiation strategy. And part of that is looking at what are the actual objectives you want to achieve. Are you looking to buy time before the data gets leaked? Do you want more information about what they did and what data they took? Do you actually need to recover your systems? Do you need the decryptor? Do you need to act quickly to do that? You're going to start looking about your proof of life, proof of possession of the data, the ability to decrypt it. And then you want to open your negotiations. Once you do that, then you want to engage your, to decide pay, no pay in terms of that aspect. Then typically we end up engaging a sort of a cryptocurrency broker, because most people don't want to buy Bitcoin and everything and house it, whereas the crypto broker will help perform, I guess, the test transaction and perform sort of sanctions checks. We'll perform sanctions checks. We only have team perform sanctions checks. And then you kind of then execute the payment and then receive your decryption keys. The important thing here is to remember that at any point, you don't have to do it. Just because you decided to engage doesn't mean you have to pay. Just because you negotiate doesn't mean you have to pay. You can always go back, because if you're innocent, you get more information. Day 1, everything's terrible. Day 4, everything may be less terrible. Day 7, actually, you don't need the stuff you've lost. So actually, your decision may have changed based on information from the incident itself. And then sort of some final takeaways. So incident response and business continuity plans are vital, so making sure you kind of have them, but also make sure you test them, make sure you know what's going on. Realistically, in a crisis, you probably aren't going to grab the plan, but at least if you've gone through it, you practice this, people know what they kind of need to do, you're halfway there to kind of resolving the crisis. Accurate threat intelligence is sort of vitally important in terms of informing the strategy. Cyber response involves sort of multiple parties. You've got your finance, legal, reputation, ethical concerns. So it's not just an IT problem. It's a whole wider university business problem. Establish how you make your hard decisions before an incident occurs, so you can, if you need to. It doesn't have to be about ransom payment, it's about any sort of negotiation problem, what you need to do, or any sort of these situations. But who needs to be involved, who needs to talk to, what regulators need to be involved. Obviously, legal advice is vitally important here to actually work out sort of the cost-benefit analysis of what you're doing. Above all, I guess sort of all these things, your cyber insurance is like a key risk transfer. You have access to a network of cyber professionals who can help you throughout this, to actually get you through this. Because the problem with a cyber incident like this, your IT team may be great, your cyber team may be great, but they are only going to be X number of people. You've got a whole environment to rebuild, to come up with, and they don't necessarily have the time to do that. So you've got the resources available, so please use them.
4 key bonus takeaways from me. First thing, cyber and cyber response and cyber crisis response is a whole of business issue and dictates commonly a whole of business response. So despite the fact that, at least from our experience, the IT teams are very well drilled and the cyber teams are very well drilled in this response, it's critical that the broader business is included in those exercisings so that they understand and can build muscle memory on how to respond. Second thing is, please, if there's one thing you can take away, separate the engage decision from the pay decision. Once again, the relationships with government, understand that, but there's value to be gained from engaging. And indeed, the Knox has told us they quite like it when you engage. They see the value, they see the benefit. So decouple those decisions. Third one is build the extortion decision-making framework. Build that. It'll set yourselves up well for success. And the fourth, as I said, test. Put yourself in the live incident scenario, exercise, and challenge your group at a incident response level, so at a cyber team level, a technical team level, at an executive team level, and then finally at a board level too.
So it's on the screen now, there's a QR code linking to one of the recent SRM report looking at, so last year we helped over 800 companies recover from cyber incidents. There's an analysis there on different threat actors, ransom negotiation, payments. It's quite a very interesting read. Yet again, it's not a malicious QR code, but I would say that. So thank you very much.